this week I'm delighted to be joined by Boris Cergol, who's the head of AI for Comtrade Digital Services. Boris, could you give our listeners an insight into who you are, your experience, and a little bit about Comtrade Digital Services?
Hi, Terry. Thanks for inviting me. So Comtrade Digital Services, it's an international company that is offering all sorts of consulting and software engineering services. So the part of the company where I work is focused on basically helping our clients implement artificial intelligence services. And actually, UK and Ireland are one of our most important markets for that.
Good. And could you give us an insight into your experience then, Boris? You know, as head of AI, you know, what are you responsible for, and how did you get there?
Yeah, so, you know, in the beginning of my career, I was a researcher. I actually started from theoretical mathematics, but then I got more and more enthusiastic for applied work. So at some point, I started my own company, a startup that was focused on artificial intelligence, especially on computer vision and also in the area of manufacturing. But then I've made the switch to a much bigger system. So now I lead this department for AI, and also I'm in charge of the partnership network, the AI collective, since Comtrade is very much oriented in building relationships with other partners when doing projects. And so, you know, this gives me a really good kind of starting point to work at, you know, many different areas. So obviously manufacturing, medical technology, smart energy, these are all kind of sectors that we.
And interesting, and obviously we are focusing on the manufacturing element, and that's good timing to introduce the topic that we're going to discuss today, which is artificial intelligence within manufacturing. And you cover the UK, so our listeners would be very interested to find out, you know, the benefits, the purpose, you know, and you, and obviously you cover the UK, so that is very, very relevant to what our listener base is. So Boris, I'll put it over to you then. Give us an insight then for AI in manufacturing.
Yeah, so in order to understand the position of manufacturing in terms of AI, it's good to put also this whole AI in terms of where it is in the larger digitalization process. So in digitalization, basically what we are doing is we are trying to move from kind of a real world to a digital one. And always the idea is that after we move all these data and processes into a digital world, then the AI systems will be able to give us some insights, since they are very much tailored to processing this digital data. And the problem maybe in manufacturing, it was that manufacturing is a very, very real world oriented business. So not so much like, you know, advertising or something similar. So maybe in this initial wave of AI, the manufacturing didn't have such benefits as some other companies. And I think that this is about to really change, because what we can see now is a very strong direction, you know, from the digital to the real world applications of AI.
Interesting. And what areas of AI do you see as being most relevant for manufacturing companies?
Yeah, so I mean, there are obviously different areas of AI that have found uses in manufacturing. So I would point out especially computer vision. This is definitely an area of AI that saw a lot of use already in manufacturing. And of course, robotics. This is a bit of an interesting story because, you know, not all robotics is very heavy in AI. So I think that the next generation robots that will really be supported by advanced artificial intelligence systems will be much different than what today you usually see in factories.
Interesting. And obviously I'm looking at it. So you know, would AI be as relevant for a cake manufacturing company as well as much as what it is for an automotive company?
Yeah, it's a very kind of horizontal technology that can be used by many different, you know, types of manufacturers. usually the main difference, at least up to now, was that bigger companies, bigger systems had an easier entry into AI. They had an easier time of building internal teams that could experiment with this technology, as some of the smaller manufacturers. However, we are fortunate today that the barriers to entry in AI are getting lower and lower. So obviously, it will spread more even among smaller companies.
Okay, and just try to put a visual on it. So you mentioned about computer vision in manufacturing in particular. Could you give us some sort of an insight into how companies are using this? So manufacturing companies, how companies are using computer vision?
Yeah, so obviously there is one natural use of computer vision in manufacturing, probably the most common one, and that is to use it for visual quality control. So basically, to use cameras and algorithms to automatically detect which products are defective. Another kind of use of computer vision is in predictive maintenance, so that we monitor with cameras critical pieces of machinery and detect whether there are some visual anomalies and set an alarm before something bad really happens.
Okay.
However, now these are kind of the use cases that already were quite well spread around, but what we are seeing now is applications in safety and security, especially now, even with all the virus situation, and you can have cameras monitoring whether people are wearing their protective equipment, so protective equipment, things like that. And also, one area that people usually don't even connect with AI, but it's really very well connected, is augmented reality. So, in Industry 4.0, there's always these images of people wearing helmets and stuff. But in order to make these systems really, really useful in real-world contexts, not just online images, you really have to integrate them very tightly with basically vision AI systems, so that actually algorithms recognize what are you looking at, what object are you holding, and provide you then with augmented reality information.
And is it so you're touching on there that more of these systems take a bit of time to learn, a specific environment? Is that what you mean?
Sorry, can you?
You mean the systems take a bit of time to learn a specific environment?
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, the kind of that there is two dualities to this. So one is how to do the learning, and then the other one is how to do inference, right? So after you have a model that is learned on training data, then you can just use it to run it. You don't have to update it all the time, but just from time to time.
And obviously, a lot of our listeners, what will be useful would be to find out, with your experience, what are some of the barriers that companies do face when implementing the computer vision systems within their factory?
Yeah, so one barrier in computer vision is definitely actually its scarcity of data. So this is sometimes surprising to people, because now we always talk about how there's more and more and more data. But actually, for example, in quality control, what we are seeing now is that often the batches get smaller in manufacturing. And also, as our manufacturing processes get more efficient, there is less defective products. So then it's an issue how to gather, many thousands of samples or even more of defective products, right? And also there's this quite a painful process sometimes of actually labeling where the defects are, and you have to not only say this image is defective or not, but you have to go pixel by pixel by pixel and annotate where exactly is the defect that you want to detect. And also, of course, the computational resources. This can be an issue for some use cases. And last but not least, the complexity of developing the models itself. I've mentioned that the barrier to entry is getting lower. However, usually putting those systems in production is still quite a complex undertaking.
And given your experience, okay, so I'm looking to put in a computer vision system within my factory. You've seen, how that's done good and how that's done bad. How would I, as a senior leader, be able to prepare the factory for that transition? What's the best way I can sort of have that platform ready?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I think in general, when we are talking with systems for quality control, visual quality control, you can go in two directions. So there is always some, low-hanging fruit in terms of quality detection, and you can solve this by just implementing off-the-shelf finished products that are aimed at this. But often what we see is that you have complex cases that require very very customized solutions. So in these cases, if you don't have a kind of an internal team that has this knowledge, then you are facing basically two choices. Either you build one, which is quite difficult and usually a slow process, or you rely on an outside partner. And both directions have their downsides. So, for example, one thing that I've recently learned about, and I think it really works quite well also from some of my experience, is what they are doing in Singapore. So Singapore is one of the most advanced countries in terms of AI, and especially in terms of how they are creating talent that has this knowledge. And then they have this type of project that they call it 100 experiments. And it's kind of, basically they hire a person who is, in a way, he's a trainee, or he or she is a trainee. And then an outside consultant basically serves as his mentor. So the outside consultants do the most, complex, high added value work, while in the meantime they are training someone who will take the role of a data scientist in the company. So you have to have this synergy in order for the project to be successful.
Interesting. And if I'm picturing in my head as we're speaking as well, right, we're talking about these programs and whatever else, I'm automatically thinking I've got to be a decent sized manufacturing facility, but I don't think that might be the case. I mean, smaller manufacturing companies might not have anything at all. You touched on off-the-shelf products and stuff like that, but what would be the best way for a small manufacturing company to kind of proceed to start on the journey of artificial intelligence for their business?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I think that if you're talking a really really small companies, I mean, less than 100 people, maybe, it's not necessarily the thing that they really have to have an AI expert. It's not always the case. I mean, but whenever you go to larger systems, I think that it would be really good to have at least one person, if not for them to develop the systems themselves, but to serve as a kind of a contact point for all the different vendors, for all the different outside corporations, so that there is really someone who has the know-how, who cannot be who really knows his stuff, so he can make good judgment whether the offers are good or not, and things like that.
And so at the end of the day, the way I would see this is as being justifiable within even a small manufacturing company. If you're a 10 million turnover business, and this, you might be looking to invest £1 million in AI, but that project would potentially pay itself off after 12 or 24 months potentially. So it would make sense, if you're making that business call, even 3 years, 5 years, it doesn't matter. Give me an idea, Boris, what's the sort of average, realistic budget that you would say is realistic, and when could somebody expect a return on investment? Or is it all dependent on that particular business, what that business does? Is it very specific, or is that a general?
So I mean, it really depends on what you are trying to achieve. So I think that initially when companies are starting out in this area, they can get a lot of value by doing smaller proof of concept projects, but they shouldn't maybe aim too high with these very first initial projects, because the purpose of such projects is usually, maybe it's not so much to have really a great success in whatever KPI you have set out in the beginning, but maybe to, in a way, test the readiness of your systems, and to learn from the mistakes that you will almost always make when making such an undertaking in the first time. So I really think that in AI, it's really an area that is good to initially make smaller iterative experiments, and then after you have this initial knowledge, then go for higher value, big ticket projects.
Okay, that makes sense. And I can see that working, especially, I mean, some people that you'll speak to won't be tech savvy at all, but what they will understand is the benefit of having that within their business or organization to take it into the next phase of business growth. How do you give that, a business owner, that sort of reassurance? Because a lot of people will be thinking you're speaking a different language at times, in terms of what you're doing, the process, even robots, when you're talking about robots, etc. How would you give a business owner the reassurance that this is the best way, this is the best product for their business? This is, how would you go about that?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, being in this business, one quickly learns that it's not really a good approach to try to be always too technical in this, right? So it's hard to convince even the experts sometimes by talking in formulas. However, I think that even for someone who is not maybe coming from a very technical background, it's a really good idea in these times to maybe learn at least a bit, not very technical stuff, but there are many courses now that are really aiming at this business audience. So how to explain the kind of the key concepts to them without burdening them with mathematics that's in behind this, just focus on the use cases.
And if someone's listening to this podcast or video, Boris, and they're thinking, do you want to know what? That's interesting. It's something I want to look into a bit further. What you mentioned some courses, etc. There is there any specific course or a book or that you would recommend for somebody to kind of read into, make sure it's for them before reaching out to someone like yourself?
So I would say that I just recently came across it, and for someone maybe who really needs a very high level introduction to AI, it's this course. It's called Elements of AI. It was developed in Finland, and basically the goal that they set out for themselves was to educate 1% of their entire population about AI. And they've made this course. It's quite good because it aims at the general audience, but it provides value. So maybe start off with that.
Okay. And I'll put that down in the comments. Actually, I'll put that down there. I'll find that in Google somewhere, or you can, we'll catch up after, and you can send me. Put me in the right direction.
That's a good idea, I think.
I think just give somebody
I've heard that it had really nice results in Finland, so that it really encouraged more people to go to kind of technical universities. Also, the share of women who go there has risen since they started with the course. So I think it's a good idea that as many people as possible see it, and it's in English also. So no need to learn Finnish first.
And obviously we're covering the benefits of AI. That's what we're covering there, and why someone should start thinking about it, etc. But with your experience, what is a problem that is currently the most interesting to you right now? What is there any issues with AI or problems?
Yeah, so a lot of the successes from AI that we talk about a lot in the media and so on. If you look at the bottom of them, it's basically it's pattern recognition. So put a lot of data into the system, and the system learns how to recognize some patterns. And if the underlying patterns change, often the system stops working. What we are seeing now, there's a lot of debate in how to make the machines capable of reasoning. So that even if the underlying patterns change, that they are able to react in a way that's a bit similar to what humans do. And there's a lot of debate whether it is possible to achieve this goal with the current systems that are based on neural networks. So people are saying that it's time for a new approach that's maybe kind of a hybrid between a neural and a symbolic approach. And this is, I think, it's really exciting stuff currently. So 10 years ago, when there were signs that this whole deep learning revolution will happen and it will change so much, I'm seeing some signs that this is the area where maybe the next major revolution in AI will happen, but it's hard to predict. Okay. I guess.
So machines actually reasoning. So to kind of put that into a visual, would that be like, so for example, if we go back to the cake factory, so the machines are learning how much is the output on an hourly basis, weekly basis, whatever it might be. However, if there's a downtime in terms of maintenance for the machinery, there's a dip in that. Does that mean that basically whatever the tolerance is it's set up, then this machine can reset to go down to a different level, but still within the same tolerances? Or
yeah. So I think that I can give you the best examples. Are from robotics. Because in robotics, the intelligent agent will be in constant interaction with the physical environment. And in the physical environment, you can have all sorts of things happen, and it's hard to program all of them in advance. So, maybe it will be, let's say that a machine notices in its working space an object that shouldn't be there, right?
Okay.
And people will usually be able to handle this situation. Maybe they will pick the object up if it's not dangerous, and put it somewhere where it isn't bothering them. With machines currently, it can break all sorts of things, because if this is a pattern that they haven't seen before, they cannot react. And if we manage to solve this problem, we will be able to have robots that have a much more natural way of interacting with their environment, and also maybe robots that you don't have to program everything into them manually, but maybe they can just look at you working, and from your interactions with your surrounding, learn what they basically should do. So that is, I think, the next generation of collaborative robots, where it will be, real collaboration, not just, the fact that if they are pushing and meet some resistance, they stop, because this is basically how the collaborative robotics more or less is defined currently.
It's all really exciting, actually, because I think, I've known about artificial intelligence for a few years. I actually tested it out in a recruitment business probably about 2 years ago. But basically, what it would do, to give you an example, Boris, basically what it would do is, if you are recruiting a role, so say it's a production manager for this cake company again, so a production manager for a cake company, you put up the job spec, it'll pull some keywords out of it. But more importantly, what it will do, it will search for competitor companies as well, companies of similar size within a geographical area, and then it'll look for the key individuals who are similar in terms of the skill set that's on that profile. So what it actually does is it pulls you up a shortlist straight away. So typically, as a recruiter, I would normally have done that whole process. Well, this actually accelerates all that. Unfortunately, when we tested that out, and it was a good investment as well. It was a lot of cash. It wasn't as smart as what I thought it was, or what it's meant to be. And it took a lot to learn, and it wasn't as accurate. The idea was fantastic, but the results were kind of poor in terms of it was really well sold in terms of the product, but the results didn't come off the back of that. But obviously, this is 2 years on. I'm guessing things are far more advanced. But that was my one experience with AI. But it's something I'm going to look at actually after this conversation. I'm going to have a wee look again. I can't remember the company's name again. Anyway, it's some American company. But yeah, there's benefits not just within manufacturing, a lot of different industries. And as you says about the next industrial revolution potentially, that's the accelerator I would see is artificial intelligence to, get it's just a different ballgame altogether.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the experience that you mentioned, I think it's really reasonably common, simply because there's so much very nice words in the media, so much expectations. I mean, The fact is that AI is really useful, and it is already really useful today. However, it hasn't yet reached that kind of general level. So you have it successful, but in very niche applications. So for example, in manufacturing, if you want to build a system for quality control, it can be excellent, and it can have a superhuman level of performance and so on. But when you move towards areas like you mentioned, so determining whether this person is a good fit for this role, it's a much less specific type of assignment. However, I wouldn't be betting on that system staying, lower than expectations for a long time.
I agree with you, and actually it's good to know, because it just means that I've still got a job for the next foreseeable future anyway. But I do see the benefit within AI. I think being an early adopter, some things will work well and some things might not. But actually, the stuff that work well should be highly beneficial to your business, because what you're doing is then automating a process or whatever it might be, and saving resource and all that sort of stuff. And as you said, you could take an off-the-shelf product, test it out, see how it goes, and then you can always bolt onto that or tweak that, as and when you go as well. But what you should be is ahead of the competition in terms of what you're doing, and if you're on the front foot, you're taking the positives with the negatives. One thing to finish up with, because we're talking about positives and negatives here, what's the one thing you're most worried about, Boris, in terms of AI?
Yeah, so it's questions especially relating to ethics. So, but not ethics in just whether what AI systems are doing, whether it's good, whether it's okay, but also kind of a society-wide ethical considerations. Since I think it's inevitable that automation will lead to larger social inequality, and it's really it has me worried whether the society as a whole will realize in time that maybe that's not a good direction, and we need to implement correct safety nets to prevent this. And also maybe relating to ethics is that sometimes I'm worried when I'm seeing all those kind of smart expert people maybe working in some use cases of AI. I won't name them so nobody is insulted. So much effort goes into something that really I don't see having a larger benefit to society as a whole. So these ethical considerations really are troublesome in the field of AI, and should be dealt with great care and focus.
And I think the benefit of having you on, Boris, is you've been within this sector for a long time. You've got a lot of experience. You've got a real passion for it, because you can hear that when we're actually speaking. What if I was a business owner and I was wanting to get in touch with you to learn a bit more? what do you handle? So what does your business handle in terms of, would it be the end-to-end process? Give us an insight then what Comtrade Digital Services would offer a potential business owner.
Yeah, so basically we have kind of three directions that we go in terms of services. So the first one is we have something we call pop-up labs. So this is kind of aimed at businesses who just want to have a first dab into AI. So, it's more kind of a consulting service that nevertheless gives maybe a short proof of concept whenever possible to the client. The second area is everything that is related to prototyping and creating POCs, so kind of a support in research and development. And the last thing, which is of course very close to us as being a kind of a mostly software engineering company, is putting AI systems into production, or taking some existing prototype or POC and doing everything that we can so that it scales through the larger context of the organization.
Good. And how would somebody reach out to you? What's the best method for somebody to reach out to you?
Yeah, so obviously you can go to our website, comtrade.ai, or you can send me an email, so boris.cergol@comtrade.com.
Perfect. And I'll put that in the comments as well, just so people.
Yeah, that would be great, because it's not.
It's various ways. Yeah, that's how we had to double check just before recording. Boris, I'd like to thank you very much. That was very informative. I enjoyed that, really do. Really did. Sorry, and the reality is, but I think there's a cautious approach within manufacturing sector where people want to embrace technology and artificial intelligence and digitalising their business in some shape or form. But I think a lot of people hold back as well. And hopefully that insight that you were able to give someone the opportunity to think, do you want to know what? Let's put the toe in the water and see how it works. And hopefully in years to come, it proves to be very, very beneficial to that business and business owner. And they're glad to listen to this podcast that we've just done. Anyway.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Terry, for inviting me. It was a really nice conversation. So I too hope that businesses get some value out of this.
Perfect.